Welcome back to AP US History. This is a continuation, part two of Jefferson's presidency. After the acquisition of Louisiana Territory from the French, uh, Jefferson commissions Lewis and Clark to hold it or conduct an expedition to investigate and record what they see in this new land. They will travel up the Missouri River by keelboat, park their keelboat in as far as they can go, and then they will acquire horses and cross the Rocky Mountains. It was a 2-year journey. This is a picture of a keelboat that they used. These were some of the Indians that they met along the way. Sacagawea helped negotiate for horses for the expedition, and she got a chance to see her people again. Eventually, on August 12th, 1805, they reached the continental divide of the Rockies, where water runs to the Pacific and the other runs to the Mississippi and the eastern side. This is a picture of Mount Hood. They would have seen if they were floating down the Columbia River. Eventually, they arrive at the coast, the Pacific coast, at the mouth of the Columbia River, and they will winter there. It shows some of the places that they stayed. They will winter in Fort Clackamas and stay there and then return the next year. The expedition yielded a lot of information, and it boosted the claim of the United States in the Oregon Territory. It also opened up trade with Native Americans and opened the way for further exploration and fur trade. During this time, there was also something called the Essex Junta. They were a group of disgruntled Federalists in the New England area who felt that they would never get a chance to be in control of the government again, so it was best that they just withdraw from the Union. Hamilton was asked to join the plot and be an official in this new government. Burr was also courted. Eventually, Hamilton will expose the plot to the president, and it will fail. Burr challenged him to a duel because of some of the unkind things that Hamilton said about Burr, that perhaps he was a traitor. The Burr conspiracy. After killing Hamilton, Burr will escape to the west to avoid any kind of prosecution for the death of Hamilton. While he's there, he tries to convince the people that of the Kentucky area, Tennessee, Ohio area, and this newly acquired Louisiana territory to secede from the Union, and he will become their leader. This shows Alexander Burr and Hamilton having a duel, and Hamilton is fatally wounded. Aaron Burr is implicated in this plot to separate part of the land from the American country, the United States, but he is unsuccessful. But he was arrested, but acquitted of all charges because a couple of witnesses never showed up for the trial. James Wilkerson, as you remember, he was the American Continental officer who had signed a loyalty oath to the King of Spain so that he might use the Mississippi River and encourage others to do the same. He will eventually expose Burr's plot to Jefferson, and then Burr will be arrested but later acquitted. The Yazoo land controversy occurred in 1804. Enemies of Jefferson claimed that he was helping his cronies, people that supported him, in an illegal land deal in Georgia. The state of Georgia had wrongfully sold millions of acres to 4 land companies that were actually federal land. The 4 land companies had bribed the legislature to sell the land. Jefferson and Madison attempted to repay the landowners for the ceded territory because they felt that that was just compensation. Of course, Jefferson's enemies claimed that he was just helping his cronies out. It weakened his presidency and split it in two. So this weakened him during his beginning of his second term. Napoleonic Wars continued, and we're going to be right in the thick of things. The French and the British are going after it for a number of years. We understand earlier that Washington claimed neutrality, and so will Jefferson, but American ships are seized. They're caught in the middle. The Berlin Decrees were announced in 1806, which said that all ports were closed to British shipping. All trade with England was illegal, and if you traded with England, your ships could be seized. So both are trying to control the high seas, both French and the British. Americans trading with Great Britain, if it was discovered, they would be confiscated by French vessels. In retaliation for the Berlin Decrees, England issued the Order of Council, which closed all ports under French continental control, so they couldn't ship. Now, one reason that they could do this is they had a far superior navy to the French. America, again, is caught in the middle, and it said that all neutrals would have to go to British ports and be inspected if they wanted to go on to any Napoleonic ports. And if you didn't, your cargo and ship could be seized. And essentially the English were trying to strangle the trade with France because they're at war with them. So if they didn't stop, their ship could be confiscated. In retaliation to the Order of Council, Napoleon retaliates and says, okay, any neutral ship that enters a British port or submits to a British warship to be searched will be confiscated when it enters a French port. No-win situation for the American shipping. In the meantime, the British are impressing American sailors, forcing them to work on British ships, which infuriates a lot of Americans. There's a group of Americans called the Warhawks who will eventually carry the day, and we will declare war on Great Britain in 1812. But during this time, before the War of 1812, about 6,000 American sailors were seized and numerous ships. The British accused U.S. of enticing British sailors to desert and serve on U.S. ships, which they couldn't necessarily prove, but they just took people off ships and made the accusation. The Chesapeake Leopard affair took place in 1807, which brought America and Great Britain close to war. The Leopard demanded that 4 sailors on the U.S. Chesapeake be surrendered. The commander of the Chesapeake refused. The Leopard fired on the American ship and killed 3 and wounded 18. Of course, Americans are pretty incensed that the British are firing on their war vessels, their navy. To avert war, Britain admitted they made a mistake and they would pay damages, but Americans are still furious about this. In response to the Chesapeake being fired upon, all ports are closed to British ships, and he calls up 100,000 militiamen. In response to this seizure of American ships, he passes the Embargo Act of 1807, which forbid all export of American goods in the U.S. It essentially closed down every port. The things that we were shipping overseas comes to a halt, almost a virtual halt. So Jefferson gets Congress to pass this law, and they go along with it. He reasoned that if there was a U.S. embargo of all goods, it would force British and French to respect American shipping rights. The embargo was a complete disaster on the American economy. New England was affected the most because they traded the most with Great Britain and France. The South and the West were affected because cotton, tobacco, grain couldn't be sold to Europe. There was some illegal trade that will take place because of the embargo. Here shows the Embargo Act of 1807. A cartoon showing essentially people were ignoring the law. But it forbid any exports from America to any place else. Unexpected consequence. What we were exporting certainly went down significantly. We're 108 million to 22 million. There were harsh laws passed to make sure that people would obey the law, but they still got around that. New England talked of secession again. If they were going to pass a law like that, they wanted to be out of the Union. Congress repealed the law 3 days before Jefferson left office in 1809. They came up with the Non-Importation Act. This is under Madison, which simply said that they would reopen ports and start trading with other countries, but not Britain and France, until they respected our rights. And this will remain the policy until the War of 1812. The embargo against Britain eventually hurt the British businesses, and they're going to ask that the British government rescind the Order of Council because of all the unemployed British people who weren't selling their manufactured goods to America. 2 days before Congress declared war on England, the British repealed the Order of Council. Unfortunately, there were no phones. A legacy that Jefferson leaves behind. Certainly, there was a transfer of power from in 1801 when he's sworn in. The national debt is reduced or eliminated, and has a balanced budget. He reversed some of the Federalist programs, such as excise tax. And we'll stop right there.